teacher at Monashers High School, and I'm going to show you how to etch a piece of copper or brass with a salt water method of etching. It's a safe etching method. It does not include any acids. You're creating basically an electrolyte solution using salt water that we're making with distilled water and salt. All you need is a Tupperware container to mix the solution in. So I'm going to mix this up right now. I'm going to super saturate the distilled water with salt. So be generous with the salt. You don't need to heat up the water, just straight out of the bottle. And stir it up. So this salt water solution will be the vehicle for the etching process. It's the electrolyte solution. Okay, so I'm going to set that aside. I have a piece of copper that's about a 22 gauge copper, and I just cut it to a shape that I want it to be. So whether you're making a pendant, earrings, a pin, just a cut, you don't need to worry about filing it or shaping it perfectly yet. We're just getting it ready to etch. So you should clean your copper. To clean my copper or brass, whatever type of metal you want to etch, just use sandpaper, fine grit sandpaper. I also go over it with steel wool to clean up any oils that might be on it. I even take an additional step by using a pickle solution. Make sure you're using tongs when you're submerging something in your pickle solution. So once it's clean, I can get it ready to etch. Okay. There are several different resists that you can use for etching. Resist is anything that's going to not be etched. Everything else around the resist will be etched away and will be lowered. So it's like a relief on a flat two-dimensional surface. My favorite way to add resist is just by using a simple Sharpie marker. You can also use tape as a resist. You can also use ink, specifically the StazOn ink, and use that with any sort of stamps that you want to. Besides tape, you can also use contact paper and cut out shapes with that contact paper, whether you do it with scissors or you use some paper punching tools. So I'm just going to add a variety of designs on this piece of metal. You can free-form designs. You can make a lot of different patterns. I prefer to use a fine point Sharpie marker. It gives me the ability to make very small marks to very broad marks. I'm going to be using a piece of contact paper that I punched out from a paper puncher. And so I'm going to remove the contact paper. Make sure your hands are dry, they're free of lotion, they're clean. So everything sticks just fine. I'm going to add that right on the surface. Make sure to press it down using my thumbnails. Now before I put this in the etching solution, I'm going to make sure that I take my Sharpie marker and I go over the edges. You don't want to have the etching solution etch into the edges of the metal and create very sharp edges. So I'm going to go around this the entire way. I also put a resist in the drill hole. And then on the back, we don't want the back to be etched. We don't want to end up with a very thin piece of metal. So you could do a couple of things. I could put a resist on the entire back with my Sharpie. I could also then, if I wanted to, cut out a small piece of contact paper and just tape the back with contact paper, and that would be a resist protecting the back from being etched down any. But I'm just going to continue with the Sharpie marker since I already started that. All right, so now it's ready to be etched. All right, some of the equipment that was shown earlier that you need is a D-cell battery, a battery holder that you can get at Radio Shack. You will need some wire caps, or you could also use some alligator clips. The alligator clips would have to be soft soldered onto the wire, so it's a lot easier just to use the wire caps. So to get this ready, I'm going to take like an 18 gauge wire and attach it to the piece that I want to etch. The piece that I want to etch is called an anode. This is going to be attached to the positive or the red lead to the battery. The other piece that I'm going to need is the cathode. And the cathode should be a piece of metal that's about the same size or bigger as the piece that you want to etch. And what I've done is I just took some scrap copper. I made sure I cleaned it, I had pickled it, and I also put an 18 gauge wire onto it through a little hole. I'm going to dip this in water real quick just to get the pickle off of it. Now this cathode is going to be attracting the open metal ions that are coming off of the piece that I'm etching, the anode. This piece is going to be attached to the black wire or the negative side of the battery. So how I set that up is I take my electrolyte solution, I'm going to put the attractor of the metal ions, the cathode, I'm going to hook it onto the side. I'm going to take the piece that I'm etching, and I want that parallel to that cathode, so this is the anode. And they should be completely submerged in the salt water or the electrolyte solution. And so if I'm just using alligator clips, all I have to do is make sure the clips are connected firmly to the wire. Okay, and what's going to happen is in a couple of seconds you'll start seeing bubbles form around the cathode, and that means that the electrical current is made and it's attracting any of the open parts of the copper onto this cathode, and it's bringing down that metal. So anything that was resisted will appear raised off of that surface of metal. If you don't have alligator clips, what I use most often is the wire caps. And so to use the wire caps instead of the alligator clips, and this is easier because you don't need to solder any alligator clips under the wires, is I take the black or the negative wire lead to my cathode, and I just hold those wires parallel and screw the cap on. And then my positive side, my anode, do the same thing. And you want to make sure you have a tight connection, that the pieces are submerged parallel from each other, and you'll start seeing bubbles form. Okay, now I've had this solution, my anode, my positive piece that I'm etching, and the cathode, it's been working for about an hour. An hour gives you a really good deep etch. You can let it go even an hour and a half if you wanted to, but I'd say minimum of an hour, maximum of an hour and a half. So to stop this process, and also note the water gets pretty murky, and that's natural, and you can use the same solution over and over and over again until the water starts evaporating. Just add some more distilled water and it's ready to use again. So to stop this process, I'm going to take the caps off. Now I had readied another piece, so it's not the same piece that I originally showed you that I was etching. So the cathode, you can use this piece again too. What I would do is rinse it off in water and then just stick it back into your pickle solution to clean it up again, and then it's ready to go. The piece that I etched, the anode, I just need to take some stuff off of it, which would be the resists. I used a piece of contact paper to protect the back so the back wasn't etched. Just gonna peel that off. And then take the wire out. I had Sharpie marker and I had a piece of contact paper that I used as a design for the butterfly. So I just need to clean off what I had on here. I had Sharpie marker as a resist, and then I had, for the butterfly, I had a punched out piece of contact paper that I used with one of the paper cutters. To clean this up a little bit more, after I rinsed it off in water, I'll just take some sandpaper and clean off the surface. I could even use some steel wool to clean it up a little bit more. And if you see, you can see that the variety of etching resists that I used worked rather well. What I like to do to make the etching show up a lot is to use a solution of liver of sulfur. It's a common patina used in jewelry making. And so I have a solution mixed up already, so I'm going to go ahead and add this on. And it'll turn black. You want to make sure you do this in a well-ventilated room. And I'm going to buff that off. It'll dry rather quickly. I'm going to buff it off with a towel. And from there, I can take some sandpaper and lightly sand it so that design shows up against the darker background. And as you can see, the design really shows up with the liver of sulfur patina. And you can repeat this process over and over again until you get the desired contrast that you want. And then to polish this, use a polishing cloth to buff it a little bit more instead of the sandpaper. This is an extremely fine grit to it. And this will add a nice polish to it. And if you wanted to spray it with a shellac or dip it in a shellac, you could, but I normally don't. I like to see how the patina wears after a while. And if you needed to file the edges and do any other sort of finish work, you can. And that's how you etch with salt water, a very safe and economical way of etching metal.